Hey guys, it is Samora Jones, your emotional restoration coach, and welcome to the Shattered Whole podcast, where we feel, talk, and heal together by acknowledging the hurt, claiming our healing, and living as a new creation. I am, as always, so excited about this week's episode, and I believe it is going to kind of get you to shake some things off and kind of just maybe have a different perspective on the way that you have looked at yourself, situations, and others. And I want to share this quote that really just sets the tone for the entire episode. The quote says, "Healing is an art. It takes time. It takes practice. It takes love." All of that. All of that. And I want to also just, preference this episode with I have given my producer a mic. So if you hear him in the background, Shaka, there he goes. If you hear him in the background, just know that we are tag teaming on this topic because it is such a necessary topic. It is actually one of the number one answers that I have to give to a majority of the questions that I get as a coach, as someone who, really emphasizes the power of healing, really emphasizes, the necessity of healing, really emphasizes forgiveness and all these different aspects, especially if you listen to last week's episode. Time is something that is necessary. I don't know what happened with my S's, but it is something that is super, super necessary in order for you to get to healing. It is the part that you can't dictate. It is the part that you can't necessarily influence. Let me say influence. You can be an active participant in how it moves, but you can't foresee when it goes from healing to healed. That space has a different timeline for everyone. Healing takes time. Healing is an art. Healing takes time. Healing takes practice. Healing takes love. I absolutely love that quote. And what I want you to preference in this episode is I want you to be kind to yourself. I said this last episode, but I want to reiterate it. I want you to be kind to yourself, and I want you to shift your perspective a little bit. What do I mean by that? I want you to, instead of going through it, I want you to heal through it. What's the difference? Going through it is just allowing things to fall where they may. It is what it is. It's almost that posture that you take when people just go, just let it go. Don't worry about it. I'm not talking about let it go and let God. That's different. I'm talking about when they're just like, oh, just let it go and act like it's like things are not existing. Healing through it is finding out, seeing how it's affecting you, and then finding out what resources that you need to implement in order to heal through it. Whether it's something that you need to address, the truth of something, separating those facts from emotions, checking out the situation, dealing with the behavior, dealing with the impact. That is something that my pastor has taught me, and as methods that he has learned and came into practice, and it has been life-changing. And the way that I see and experience situations. In fact, I am less offended when I use that kind of methodology of thinking. And it allows me to not escape pain. I don't get to just fast forward through the hurt. I don't get to just avoid it altogether. I still experience hurt, disappointment, but the mindset that has propelled me out of a lot of dark spaces was that I'm going to make a decision to heal through it instead of just going through it. Let's talk about that. Story time. Huh, Shaka? Let's give him a story.
Love a good story.
Love a good story. So, as many of you guys know, at this point, if you've been listening to my podcast at any length of time, I reference the situation of when I was a child, and my father had molested me as a child, and but often I don't talk about the relationship with my mother, which is also an interesting one, right? So when I was a kid, I told my mother what my dad did, and she didn't remove us from the situation. In fact, the only reason why I was put into foster care was because someone else told. And they came in, they got me from school. And I was in foster care for about 3.5 years. And we'll do the testimony later of the detrimental experiences that I experienced in foster care. But I asked my mom a question when I came back home. And I asked her, because I had asked my caseworker first. I was like, hey, why can't we go home? And she was like, very simple. She was like, until your father leaves the home, you can't go home. And so when I came back to the house that I asked my mom, I was like, well, what took you so long to kick daddy out the house when you knew that they had took us away and that we couldn't come back home until he left? And my mother said to me, well, he didn't have anywhere to go. I was 9 when she told me that. I was 9 when she told me that. And I didn't know necessarily where to put that. Because on the one hand, I just loved my mother. And I was too young to really understand the nuances of so many things. But I know that hurt me. And I knew that I felt like she chose him over me. And that I don't think that she understood the level of abuse that I was enduring outside of the home. So it wasn't like I went from one space where I was abused into a place of safety, even though that was the story that the social workers and caseworkers were telling me. They were like, don't worry, now you're going to be safe. But I just went into a very broken system where I was beaten and starved and so many other things. So I was still being abused. It just was different. And so it was really hard to hear my mother say, well, he didn't have anywhere to go. And that was a good enough reason for her to allow us to endure what we did. So I just was really hurt by that statement. So let's fast forward. I have forgiven my mom, and I used to go over to, my house. My mother's still alive, by the way, because I realize sometimes, like, the way statements may be, said, that it may sound like she's still here, and praise God. And we're good now. But there was a time where I went over to her house and I used to do like her hair. So I'm like crocheting her hair, and it was really odd to me that over the years, even after I had forgiven my dad and we were, in a better place, if you mentioned my dad's name, she would have a fit. Like, she would suck her teeth. She would be so angry. She would be so upset. And she was like, I don't understand why you would talk to him after what he did to y'all. I don't understand why you would, endure anything with him after what he did to y'all. And I had to have a very, very difficult and hard conversation with my mother. But I felt like she needed to hear it and I needed to say it. And I prefaced the conversation with, I have forgiven you and I have forgiven Dad. I said, but we got to talk about the truth. And I want you to understand that I understand more of the picture now as an adult than I could ever have even fathomed as a 9-year-old, which makes sense, right? So, I had told my mother that you're so angry with Dad about what he did, understandably, but you were an active participant in what happened. And she was insulted. She was like, what are you talking about? Like, what? I said, you knew that he was hurting us and you did not change the situation. You knew that we were taken away from you and you did not do anything about it for 3 years. Some of the things that I had to endure was not because I had to, but it was because you didn't make a different decision. And I said, but here's what I also understand now as a woman who has experienced some eclectic things of life. Last episode, I talked about the fact that no one had really asked my father about the pain and the situations that he endured and that he went through. But there was a lot of things that my mother had endured, and it influences the way that you make a decision. It influences what you think you have the strength to do, even at the detriment of those you love the most. It is unfortunate that I had to endure what I did, but it is also unfortunate that she had to have the experiences that she did. When my mom was young, she, maybe 18 years old, had got pregnant and ended up marrying the man that she had got pregnant by. And that man was abusive. He had an alcohol problem and he abused him, and she ended up, she had the baby, but ended up losing my oldest, sister 2 weeks after she was born. And she never really had the opportunity to mourn the loss of her child and to deal with the domestic abuse that she was experiencing from her first husband. And once she was able to leave, she got into a relationship with my dad when she did not deal with the hurt and the low self-esteem that she had. And my dad was charming, was funny, charismatic, tall, handsome, a Marine. He was very different than the men that she had previously experienced. He made her feel beautiful and seen and important and validated, even though he did so many things to hurt her. but he was still different. And she was raised in a time where you stood by. You stood by your man. You endured it. Her identity, she believed at one point, was to be of servitude, to a man. Like, there was so many things mentally that she was enduring, that she was going through. And some people may say, you know what, I don't really care what she was feeling. She was your mother, and she should have seen, and she should have did that, and she should have, would have, could have. I'm talking about the humanity of her. I'm talking about the humanity of a woman who had low self-esteem, who had a high school education, who had moved out of the place that she grew up, where she had family but couldn't really talk the way that she wanted to, was more meek than anything else, and was frustrated and was hurt and just didn't know her worth. And she had children, and she now had this call to be stronger than what she felt she had the capability of being. Now, later on, my mother's strength grew tremendously, but it grew after. It grew after the pain. It grew after the damage. It grew after all of those things. And having a conversation with her about her contribution to the hurt was something that was hard for her to hear, but she understood it. And what I told her was, it took time for me to understand, not be okay with it. I still, wish that things were different, but I can see the humanity of her, especially being a woman, especially being a mom. And though I have the benefit of being stronger in some areas than she was, to not make the same mistakes that she did, but it took time to forgive her. It took time to understand aspects of her. It took time to see myself in her. It took time to not despise what I saw about her in me. And it took time to then appreciate the beauty of the aspects of what she gave to me through pain, that she gave to me through uncertainty, that she gave to me through finding the courage that even after she couldn't change what had happened, that she could be present and move differently. Hey guys, Samora Jones here, your emotional restoration coach. I am beyond thrilled to let you know that Shattered Whole, my book, is available on Amazon right now for you to purchase. It states that it's an interactive journal with someone who understands. Who's the someone? It's me. There's no mystery. You ain't got to figure it out. It is an opportunity for me to partner with you as you are unpacking all the things that you are desiring to heal through. I'm excited to be your partner. I'm excited to be your coach. And this is the first step. So make sure that you go and you get the book. And I cannot wait to have a conversation with you outside the pages. Now tune into Shattered Whole podcast. There are going to be moments in time where you don't want to be that understanding. I don't want to care that much about what the person is doing and how they got there and why they're doing it, and hurt people. But there's something that happens in the course of time when you start to deal with your healing process, that it causes more compassion to the very person, to the very situation that hurt you. It doesn't mean that you are now okay with it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you start to see the flaws in people in situations in ways that you wouldn't have seen before. And it opens up different doors for you in the way that you heal. But all of these thoughts, processes, and things come through this annoying thing at times called time. It is a desire, a want, sometimes a beg and a plea for things to move faster. I just want to get over this. I just don't want to deal with this. I don't want to think through this. I don't want to go through this. Samora, like, okay, so you were able to work it out and you were able to how did you how do you do it? And that's what I talk to you about. I talk to you about all the processes that I go through, but I always caveat what it is that I'm talking about with. And I was like, and then these things take some grace for yourself and others. It takes time for yourself and others in order for you to get to this place called healing. I want to also talk about.
Before we go, I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
So do you feel that your mother finally hit that time? It took time for your mother to start her healing process in order to get the kids back home, in order to bring you guys back in to that situation? Or do you feel as though, like, what do you think shifted in her to kick your dad out in order for her to get you guys back home?
I think it was a fallout in their relationship. So I don't think, I never got the full answer to it, but I don't think that there was I'm kicking him out. It was the relationship was over. Like, she no longer was connecting with him, and he realized that there was no reconciliation, and then moved and ended up, moving with somebody else. Right? Because he weren't here yet. He was still going through, doing the things that he was doing, because he was also, like, cheating on her and doing all sorts of, like, ridiculous things to disrespect her on multiple levels. And with that, I think it forced her to sit alone for a period of time where she had to sit with the reality of where her life was. That the man that she loved wasn't who she thought he would be, and that he didn't change and become the potential that she felt that he could be. And she had to face the facts versus her potential, imagination. And then she had to deal with the fact that her children weren't there, and what can I do about it? I honestly think, through me being honest in the process as a teenager, with my mom, because we would just talk. What I valued about, and still value, unfortunately my mother has Alzheimer's now, so we can't have the conversations that we used to have. But what I valued was we would have conversations vulnerably. She would be honest about how broken she was. And I would be honest about how broken I was. And in a exchange of brokenness, we found strength. And I believe that it gave her courage to be more than she thought she could be, because she had the people who she felt she did the most harm to cheerleading her on. I would tell my mother that she was beautiful. I would tell my mother that she was smart. I would tell her that she was important. I would tell her that she was someone that I needed. Because I don't think she got that the way that she needed to growing up and within the relationships that she was in. Men would always like come up to my mother and like try to talk to her, even though we were with her. I'm like, gross, back up off my mom.
Same thing happened to me, so you good.
Yeah. Yo, it is. Listen, guys, leave people. Find a different time. I don't know. Find a different time. Find a different way. But don't be trying to talk to my mother while I'm with her. I'm sorry. I wasn't mature enough for that back then. But what it did was it allowed my mom to build her strength and her confidence a little bit. Like, my mom, even now, like, she still struggles with believing, like, her beauty and her brilliance. Even in Alzheimer's, she still struggles understanding how smart she is. Like, I still remind her and I still tell her, and she's like always shocked when I say it. Why are you so pretty? Are you like, oh, well, thank you. Oh my goodness. Like, she's always like shocked and surprised, by it. But she is. My mother has one of the biggest hearts that I know. And her heart is the demonstration of God's grace in my life in so many different ways. And I'm going to pause a little bit right there because I'll tap in and we're going to have a crying podcast.
The tears will start rolling down slowly.
I'm Churchill.
Can't do that on the podcast.
Can't do that on the podcast.
Can't speak in tongues on the podcast.
Yeah, shut it also. Yes, I can. Okay. Hallelujah. But what I recognized was that she needed time and so did I. And here's the thing. When you both need time and they don't correlate at the same time, we're healing at different measures. We're healing at different time stamps within this timeline, and they don't always overlap to match each other's need. It just did not. The time that I needed her to be healing in order for her to produce for me wasn't the time that she was ready or capable to make the decision to begin healing, but I still needed to do my own healing, which means I had to make a decision for me outside of anybody else. Whether or not anyone else was ready to begin their healing journey, I needed to begin mine. A lot of times you will hear me say, it was a decision that I made at 16. The fruit from the decision that I made at 16 probably didn't start to manifest until a decade later. It took time. Because sometimes you have to understand what the problem even is. What are you mad about? Is it just the abuse? Or how it domino affected in your life? Are you mad now? Are you now mad at yourself for the way that now you start making decisions about you? Are you mad because of the way that you now view yourself? Because it may stem from one place, but there was some acceptance and some believing that you took on that then gave permission for certain behaviors and actions. Because at some point, you can't blame your past anymore. At some point, you have to take accountability for the choices that you're making and recognize the help that you need. Healing is not something that should be done alone. It should not be done in isolation. And I believe that my mom was so alone in her mind of what she felt like she deserved or what she wasn't worth, that it was really difficult to be anybody else's champion. Sometimes you not dealing with you and not giving yourself grace and time will impede your ability to be someone else's aid, help, resource, demonstration of love, compassion. And we need each other. We need each other. We need to do good for ourselves so we can do good for others. And also understand when we're not on the same healing timeline, which is a good portion of the time, I want to talk to the believer, because I recognize that everybody who listens is maybe not a person of faith, or if you are a person of faith in this particular topic, I want to say something to you, because I think we get mad in a different way. There is something about us as believers that think that because we have a relationship with God, that we get a get out of jail free card of pain. That we get to skip it, that it shouldn't feel like everybody else's, that it should look and move different, and I don't understand. And I'm kind of confused by that a little bit, because if you read that Bible at all, if you read that joke out at all, you will see the level of excruciating pain that at times you just have to endure. The difference is we have a source. The difference is we have Holy Spirit. The difference is we have a connection. The difference is that there is there is a force that we have connection to, a relationship with concerning God, that will heal places that we can't touch. So on the one hand, you can take the principles of everything that I'm saying and begin this journey. You can take take notes and start to walk on this path and implement it. But if you don't have a connection and relationship with God, there's something missing. It's going to feel incomplete. It's going to have an emptiness to it that only God can give, because there is some spaces and places where healing is necessary that good practices won't get you. I want to make sure that you understand what I'm saying. There are some aspects of the pain that you have endured or are enduring that journaling won't help with, that taking walks won't help with, that talking to your therapist won't help with. All things that are powerful, good, and therapeutic. But there's a key component that needs to be the foundation for those spaces. And that is a connection, relationship, a release to your spiritual father. And some may be like, I don't agree with that. That's okay. I'm only talking to those who are called to me, and I have to be honest with you. If I'm saying that I want to share this with you, I want to be clear with you. I want to be transparent. I want to be honest. I'm telling you that I have implemented all of these practices, but the foundation of it is my relationship with Christ. He is the freedom, the redemption, the mercy, the grace, the love, the compassion. That is how I can birth it as a fruit in my life for myself and others. And in relationship with God, I don't get to escape pain. But he says this, and I'm really grateful for it. Because the word says that he'll never leave or forsake. He'll never leave me, and he'll never forsake. Why does he need to say that? Because there are going to be situations and times that take time. And in it, no matter how small, no matter how big by our standard, because there's nothing big or small to God, our purview perspective of it. He never leaves. He never forsakes. So no matter how long it takes, no matter how long I take to get it, to understand it, to get through it, to heal through it, he never leaves. He never forsakes. Because even God knows that it takes time. It takes time. Healing takes time. So show yourself some grace. Get up off your neck. Because some of you are so hard on you. Some of you are so hard on you. If you're grieving, well, I should be done grieving by now. By whose standard? Oh, I should be over this relationship by now. By whose standard? Well, I should be here in my life by now. By whose standard? It is a bondage that we put on ourselves when we are pigeonholed to these timelines that we have either self-imposed with no foresight of the full picture, or that we have allowed someone else to impose on us as if they have a picture of the future. If it took you a year to get over the relationship, it took you a year. Now I should have been over it in 2 months. I don't understand why this still bothers me. It still bothers you because you love that person and they were a part of your life in a way that was intimate, and that you shared aspects of them with them that were deep and that were serious and that was important to you, and you bonded with that person. And that person is no longer a part of your life. So now you have to unattach yourself from that person and the expectations that you have for them and the dreams and aspirations that you had for the future of the relationship with that person. It took time to get into the relationship. It's going to take time for you to get out of the relationship mentally and emotionally. Give yourself time. I don't understand why it still hurts me that, my grandmother passed or my mother passed and it's been so long and I'm not good. It takes time. Now, what may happen over the course of time is that you will grieve and be hurt in a different level. And a time where you felt like you couldn't breathe may graduate to a time where you just have these moments where you break down, and then breakdown moments will turn into moments where you just remember them every couple of, months, and just have a moment where you need to pause, and then pausing moments will just turn into a smile where you just be like, man, I remember when we did this. I just miss being able to do that. And then I miss being able to do that with just like, I'm so grateful that I had that time. There's stages. There's stages through the course of time that gets you to healed as you're in, but you have to go through healing, and putting these time restraints on you are creating a different level of anxiety, because now you're not fighting the issue, you're fighting the clock. You're yelling at yourself emotionally to be done and be finished and be, over this thing by this time. And don't make the mistake of treating your emotions like your vacation time and your personal time that you get at work. Well, I only got 3 weeks, so I got to be over it by then. I only got 6 personal days, so I need to get through it by then. I only got this, so I can only do it by then. You were trying to push a 6-year process into 6 days and then wonder why it's not working. You needed more time. You needed to grow in stages. You needed to find out why you did this. You needed to find out why you chose him. You need to find out why you let her stay so long. You need to find out why, you need to find out what was going on with you that these negative decisions was okay. Or there are some times where it's no one's fault ish happens. It happens. I'm really proud of myself that I didn't cuss. Come on out here.
Proud of you too. I almost had to mute it.
Listen, you better know growth is happening. Healed right here. Because I got a cussing spirit. Okay.
Before you delineate to the cussing spirit, what will you say to those who may use your words right now as a means for procrastination to their healing?
So, giving yourself time means that you're not putting a time period on how fast you're supposed to get through it. That does not give you permission or an excuse not to do your due diligence in the work of things that you do recognize. If you recognize that you have a weakness for falling for someone without getting to know them, and it is a perpetual cycle for you, that doesn't say, well, it just takes me time to deal with this so I can just go ahead and fall for this guy again. That's not what I said to you. That is not what I said to you. What I told you was the time that you need to get over the relationship, to take a deeper dive look into you about why you're making the decisions that you're making. I was like, that takes time. And I was like, while you're taking the time to do the deep dive investigation on the you that's in the mirror, don't be so hard on yourself if you fall and you make a mistake. Or if you're not over it already. I should have grown from it, or I should have seen all the signs. Did you take time to find out what the signs were? Did you take time to find out why you're so susceptible to falling for those particular things? What work did you do? I use the phrase emotional sweat equity because it is important to do the investment in yourself emotionally, to take equity within yourself, because you are the most valuable possession that you have. You are the most valuable possession, land. The space that you take up from side to side, all of you, taking emotional sweat equity means that you are taking an internal and external inventory on who you are and who you surround yourself with and why. It does not give a permission statement to procrastinate and doing the internal and external work. And some people be like, well, that sounds too hard. That sounds like too much. That sounds exhausting. It is not exhausting when you give them your number. It's not exhausting when you invite them over. It's not exhausting when you feel good for the moment. You got to be worth more to you. You got to be worth more to you than instant gratification. You're too important. You're too important. If no one has told you yet, you are too valuable not to be worth the work. Here's the thing. You're going to work regardless. Either you're going to work in your depression or I was like, are you going to work to avoid it? Either way, you're going to work it. You might as well do your due diligence for the person in the mirror. And that doesn't mean that you're selfish. It doesn't mean that you're unkind. It means that you get to know you, that you fall in love with you in a different way, that you take advantage of the essence of who you are. And then you can take real joy in having conversations and getting to know other people because you know who you're talking about when you're talking about you. Some people are strangers to themselves. So it is something that you can't escape. And you tried it. You tried to speed it along or act like it didn't exist or think that because you were functioning that you were healed. And you always found out that it wasn't true when it would invite itself into conversations, into relationships, into boardrooms, into all these different stages and spaces in your life. And you're just like, why do you keep showing up? Well, you never gave it its eviction notice. You never did the investigation into you to figure out why that's still there. I want you to heal through it, not go through it. And I want you to give yourself time to do so. You're so worth it. And I'm excited for your journey. I am so excited for your journey. Wow, you beautiful soul. So listen. As always, is what I want you to remember. I want you to remember that I see you, that I am listening, that I love you, and God bless.